Once upon a time there was a young boy named Jack who lived in a small village at the edge of a deep, dark forest. Jack was an adventurous child who loved exploring the woods near his home. One bright, sunny day Jack decided to venture deeper into the forest than he ever had before. As Jack walked along the shady forest path, he daydreamed about what he might find. Might there be fairies flitting through the trees? Perhaps he would find a babbling brook filled with fish just waiting to be caught. Jack imagined himself a brave knight, forging his way through the thick woods in search of danger and adventure. The further Jack went, the darker and denser the forest became. Huge oak and evergreen trees blocked out most of the sunlight. Strange noises echoed around him, cracking twigs, rustling leaves, and the occasional scurrying of unseen creatures. Jack shivered, but pressed onward, determined to discover new sights. After what seemed like hours of hiking, Jack came to a fork in the overgrown trail. One path led to the left, the other to the right. Squinting into the gloom, Jack tried to see where each trail led, but they disappeared into darkness. He wished he had left a trail of breadcrumbs or stones so he could find his way back. Jack sat down at the fork trying to decide which path to take. Suddenly, Jack heard a strange sound coming from the left path, like tinkling bells mixed with faint laughter. Curious, he headed down the left trail hoping to find the source of the enchanting sound. The tinkling and laughter grew louder as Jack entered a sun-dappled clearing. He gasped in shock and wonder at what he saw. There were a dozen tiny fairies flitting about in the air. Jack rubbed his eyes in disbelief. The fairies glowed with a soft light, their glittering wings beating so fast they were a blur. Jack crouched motionless, not wanting to frighten the magical creatures away. The fairies floated among the wild flowers, their voices like the tinkling of small bells. Jack was enthralled. He always knew fairies were real, and here was the proof. One of the fairies with purple hair and shimmering wings spotted Jack and flew toward him. "Hello, human child," the fairy said in her tiny voice. "Are you lost?" Too stunned to speak, Jack just nodded his head. "Well, we will help you find your way. I'm Violet." Violet gestured to the other fairies who had all stopped their fluttering about to stare curiously at Jack. "Come, follow us." Jack got up and trailed after the fairies who flitted slowly through the woods so he could keep up. They led him through dense thickets and around massive trees until the woods began to look familiar again. After some time Violet stopped and hovered in front of Jack's nose. "The edge of the forest is just ahead. Do you know the way home from here?" "Yes," Jack cried happily. "Thank you for helping me. I would have been lost forever without you." Violet and the other fairies smiled. "You are always welcome in our forest. But beware, there are dangers as well as wonders here. Not all magic is good." With that warning, the fairies whisked away into the depths of the woods until Jack could no longer see their glowing forms. Jack walked slowly out of the forest, thinking about his extraordinary encounter. He couldn't wait to tell his village about the fairies, but who would believe such a tale? Jack made his way back to the village just as the sun was setting. He went straight to his mother's house and found her anxiously waiting for him on the porch. "Jack, there you are. I've been worried sick. Where have you been all day?" his mother cried, pulling him into a big hug. "I got lost in the forest, but you won't believe what happened," Jack said breathlessly. "I found fairies, real fairies." Grabbing his mother's hand, Jack dragged her inside, eager to tell her every detail of his adventure. Jack's mother listened patiently to his story, but Jack could tell she didn't quite believe him. "It must have been a dream, Jack. Fairies don't exist," she said gently. Jack's shoulders slumped in disappointment. "But it really happened. I really did see them." Jack's mother ruffled his hair affectionately. "It's getting late now. Get some rest, and no more wandering in the forest for a while." Jack trudged up to his room, but he knew he wouldn't be able to sleep. How could he after seeing real, magical fairies? He peered out his bedroom window into the darkness of the forest. Somewhere out there were Violet and her fellow fairies. And who knew what other magic the woods held? Jack made up his mind then and there that this would not be his last adventure into the deep, enchanted forest. The next day Jack decided he had to find proof to show his mother that the fairies were real. So he ventured back into the woods, retracing his steps to the sunlit clearing from the day before. But when he arrived at the spot, there was no sign of the fairies. "Violet? Are you here?" Jack called out, but only silence answered him. The clearing was empty except for a few flowers bobbing in the breeze. Jack sighed, disappointed. What if his mother had been right after all? What if it really had only been a dream? As Jack turned to go, a flash of purple caught his eye. There, on a stone at the edge of the clearing, sat a tiny fairy with bright purple hair. Jack gasped. It was Violet. Violet stood up and put her hands on her hips. "Jack, you're back already? I told you these woods can be dangerous." "I know," said Jack. "But I need your help. My mother doesn't believe I saw fairies. Will you come back to my village and show yourself to her?" Violet considered his request, then nodded. "I will help you prove we exist. But only this once. Fairies value our secrecy." "Oh, thank you," Jack cried. "Just let me get something to carry you in." Jack removed his wool cap and Violet flew lightly down to perch on top. Jack walked slowly through the woods, peering into his hat every so often to make sure Violet was all right. When they neared the village, Violet ducked down out of sight. "Remember, just this once," she reminded Jack as they reached his cottage. Jack burst through the door calling, "Mother, Mother! See, I was right." He held out the hat and Violet gracefully flew up out of it, her violet glow lighting up the room. Jack's mother clasped her hands to her chest in shock. "Good heavens! A fairy?" Violet curtsied politely in midair before landing back on Jack's hat. "Pleasure to meet you. But now I really must be going." Jack begged her to stay a little longer, but Violet insisted she needed to return to the forest before evening fell. As she flew away, Violet turned and called back to Jack, "I'm sure we'll meet again." Jack's mother hugged him close. "Oh, Jack. I'm so sorry I didn't believe you. You really did see fairies." Jack grinned, happier than ever now that his magical experience was proven real. From that day on, Jack never feared getting lost in the forest. He knew if the fairies found him, they would guide him safely home. And Jack treasured the memory of his fairy friend, hoping that one day he truly would meet dear Violet again.